Hi, this is Eric Martin with BoardGameGeek. I am here with Gates from Leader Games, who has graciously joined us to talk about Fort, designed by Grant Rodiak, that he originally released on his own and that Leader then transformed completely. So, yes. Thanks for joining us, Gates. I don't know if you want to give a little overview of how the game came to be a Leader game. What attracted you about the design?
That's one of my favorite stories to tell. And thank you so much for having me, Eric. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. Several years in COVID time, I think. But yeah, today we have Fort, which is actually out at your local game store right now, or you can buy it directly on leadergames.com. So the pre-order window is now closed. So you can just buy it directly. So how Fort came to be, as Eric mentioned, is that it was originally called SPQF, that Grant ended up kickstarting all on his own and only had very limited quantities. I think it was around 800. And one of our on-staff developers, Nick Brockman, actually ended up finding a copy of SPQF because he's a big card game player. A lot of us actually in the studio are big like Magic the Gathering or Netrunner fans. So we try to find deck builders and try to find innovation in that niche. So Nick ended up picking up SPQF, ended up approaching Grant and was like, what would it take for us to bring this game in studio? And so basically Nick pitched it to everybody, Cole, Patrick, and everybody else in the studio. And we approached Grant and he kind of agreed. And so as far as what's different from SPQF to Fort, being the obvious one is that we rebranded it. SPQF originally was anthropomorphic animals, which I don't know what other game we could think of has anthropomorphic animals. But we didn't want to use the Root IP because we have so much more Root in store. Right. Kyle ended up pulling art.
Yeah, you don't want to be only the Root company.
Exactly. And, you know, we've talked, as the company has grown, we've talked a lot about these different lanes of development we want to form. And so being like maybe more small box games that we don't have to rely on Kickstarter. So Kyle ended up finding art from an old concept idea called Camp, which was kids at a camp. And then Nick attached to it, took a lot of inspiration from TV shows like Recess and Kids Next Door, and then that's how the theme of Fort came to be. There's also redevelopment by us. I wouldn't say it's a big, huge departure. If you played SPQF, you'll be able to look at Fort and be able to plug in and play right away. I would say some things got streamlined down. It's not as algebraic, like I just like to describe it. But yeah, that's how Fort came to be. And I'm happy to jump into how the game goes.
Sure. So you talked about kids at camp being the inspiration for the setting of the game. So we're not specifically at camp, I think, but we are kids.
No, kids in a cul-de-sac now.
Yes. Playing with other kids.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have a deck of cards, which are your friends. Your starting cards are your best friends there, which Nikki has laid out perfectly. So whenever you pick up a player board, you will have the player board itself and your two best friend cards. And then from that point, you will take 8 cards from the top of the deck. So you have a total of 10 cards in your deck itself. And you'll pull a hand of 5 cards. And then the other place where cards are displayed is also in the yard. So like I mentioned, you are kids in a cul-de-sac and you are going to be recruiting friends from either the park or the yard in front of the other players. And you are trying to get resources like pizza and toys to then upgrade your Fort level, which is on that track there that Nikki is displaying. So you can see that the pizza and toys will be stored in your stuff there, and then your Fort level will be advanced by end up cashing in those resources that you get. So kind of going over what a basic turn looks like. On your turn, you will always have a hand of 5 cards. And like on the player boards, we have that turn summary, which you're very familiar in all of our games. You will play 1 card. If you show 1 card for us there, Nikki, I can describe what goes on. Awesome. So here's Flipper. If you notice that you have the top action and a bottom action. So that top action is considered the public action. And the bottom action is considered a personal action. If you notice that left icon being like a person shape, that's for you, the player. So that top action allows us to get 2 resources, either 2 pizzas, 2 toys, a pizza and a toy, and then you can trash a card. So very similar to most deck builders, we're familiar with being able to remove a card from our deck. That's important so you can kind of streamline the engine that you're building within your deck. And the really cool thing about Fort is that now everybody has a chance to copy and follow that top action on that card. Nikki, can you pull another card for me too so I can explain the suits? Awesome. Perfect. So if we notice on Bug there, we see the shovel icon and you see that public top action, the public action, you can get pizza for every shovel that you play. So you have the option to modify with more shovel cards in your hand, just like with Sarge. So if we modify with Sarge there, we would have 2 shovels we've played, meaning we would get 2 pizzas on our turn. And then if somebody, our opponents want to copy that action, they will then also play a shovel card out of their hand to copy my top action. Now, why that is important is because if we go down further on the turn summary is that we would recruit a card, which we can get from that, from the park or somebody's yard. And then we would discard cards, enter a yard that we do not play yet. So whatever cards you end up playing on your opponent's turn won't be discarded. So that will save the kids from being out to the yard and possibly getting drafted away on your opponent's turn. So that's the basic turn summary of Fort. And the really cool and interesting thing is, other thing I didn't mention is the best friend cards. If we pull up, I think it was Flipper who had the rainbow icon. Awesome. So if you notice he has a star there, your best friends can never, they can be trashed out of the game, but they can't be discarded into your yard. So you'll always have both of your best friend cards with you at all time. One of them is a wild, like Flipper here, with that icon being a multicolored icon. And then the other things about the game, which one of my personal favorites is if Nikki, if you bring back the player board for us, is that we have the lookout up at the upper left-hand corner. And that allows you to store cards. There's some cards in the deck that have an icon. Let's see, if you can pull up the player icon card. And then there's some cards that have an icon that have the lookout symbol that then allow you to tuck in the card and then be able to utilize those suits on your turn whenever you're modifying your cards. Some people find this very a la Glory to Realm. So, but yeah, basically you're then going to be playing cards, trying to get resources like the pizza and the toys, and then advancing your fort level. So it's really interesting as you're trying to tempo your opponents in the game, and really being kind of looking over at your opponents being like, hold on, can you advance a fort level next turn? Or trying to guess what cards to keep out of their deck as much as possible as well.
Okay. So we got the action of building the fort. We see the victory track in the middle. How does the fort and other cards translate into points?
Yes, absolutely. So how you end up getting points in the game is that there's certain cards in the game that will translate into points as you're trashing resources, or you can get points for having things in your pack. Also, if you notice on the bottom of the player board, you have points at the end of the game that are relating to that'll be added there. And how the game ends is if the first person to advance to fort level 5, first person to go to 25 points, the game will end, or if you run out of the deck, like most deck builders. Also, one thing I needed to mention is as you're advancing your fort level, at fort level 1, you're going to get access to made up rules, which are those pink cards off to the side. And those made up rules are private to you. Once you advance your fort level to fort level 1, you will get access to look at the made up rules for that game. And that's also how you'll end up getting points at the end of the game. And this is only for yourself. Okay. So there's certain of them, I think Nikki had just showed Loner. So at the end of the game, you're going to be scoring, I think it is 5 points if you've trashed all your best friends, Or Big Plans is at the end of the game, you score 1 victory point for every fort advance action you have in your deck. And so this can kind of help you gear your deck towards getting points at the end of the game. The other thing is when you advance to fort level 2, if Nikki, you want to show me the perk cards, those will gain you special abilities to then use in the game. And those abilities can be growing your pack. It can be end up trashing the card to take an action only for yourself. Recycling allows you to trash a card and then add a card from your discard, and so on and so forth. So you're getting those points, to circle back to your question, Eric, getting those points by advancing your fort level, which you'll get at the end of the game, using card abilities like that will allow you to trash pizza to get points, counting cards in your lookout to get the points. So some people will build an engine. A big one is using this card called Munch, is a big one where you're ending up getting a lot of pizza to then use Munch to translate all of those into victory points for yourself.
Okay.
And then also one thing I didn't mention, Nikki, the wonderful macaroni sculpture, which we have one built in our office here. The person who reaches to fort level 5 first will also get the macaroni sculpture, which gives them 4 victory points more at the end of the game. Yeah.
All right. This is crazy. It's fascinating, all the little details on every card, because it seems like you can have a story for almost all of it. For example, I am very curious where you're shopping to get pizza with shovels. I don't know if I necessarily want to partake of that, but
yeah, kids are innovative. And even speaking about the story, Eric, Kyle had mentioned on a live stream on one of our past, as far as the art, there's a card that I'm looking at right now called Tink, which is a kid with putting stickers on his face, and it's where he's translating pizza into toys. So he's trying to we have this narrative or this canon of where he's putting stickers on the resources to make them whatever they are. And then also another thing is everybody on the Leader Game staff has their own card art, so you can find all of us in the game itself, which Kyle drew from our childhood photos as well. So there's a story around almost every single piece of art Kyle draws. So
okay. Plus, you just have the basic action of Flipper, your best friend, where one of the actions is going to be that you trash a card, but of course that actually equates to ditching a friend from your circle.
Yes,
you're just
absolutely.
Yeah, be gone. That's right.
Yeah. Oh. And it's really cool in the game that people will start having this narrative. Captain is another one. Munch is another big one that just like I'm using it, when people play the game, it'll be no, I want Munch to be my friend. I want Captain to be my friend because of what that card does for you when they are in your friend group. And also sometimes it's sad whenever you have a card in your yard and it gets taken away, being but I didn't want them to go. So it adds this really cute story element and narrative to the game.
Yes. Ghost as well. It definitely seems like there's a story with Ghost.
Oh yeah, we're showing some of my favorite art, the double icon cards. To explain how those work, those are all the cards are doing the actions based off how many icons are there. So if you follow up with a skateboard action card, like right now I have Dash in my hand, and you play the Rocket Bros with them or Spike there, that means you can end up doing that top action 3 times. And also you'll have to be able to complete that action fully to be able to play all the icons as well. Important rule to note.
Okay. So I believe 7 suits in the game, and yes, they're used no matter the player count. So you just...
Yes. The only thing that changes for the player count is how many perks are put out and how many made up rules are put out. So it's always player count +1 for those. So that way you can have a little bit of variation between each game.
Okay. And yet the playing time seems very short for all that you're describing.
Yes.
How does that work out? Is it one of those sort of deck builder things, start slow and then you just rock it at a certain point, or?
Absolutely. I would say if we played a 4-player game, easily it's going to take, with Teach, it's going to take about 45 minutes. But once you have your gaming group and you're playing 4 every time before you get into your big game for the night, you can easily get it down to a 25-minute to a 30-minute game. Just because there's certain strategies of people trying to lean into a heavy fort advanced strategy or a heavy point advanced strategy, because the game ends at that 5th fort level or that 25 points. Usually we see people do the fort advance or the points before the deck gets depleted, but it does depend on how many players you have. And then also to note, it could take a little bit longer if at the beginning of the game you want to draft your initial 8 cards, which I would recommend if you've played Fort before. Draft so you can kind of have a good starting point for your deck and you know what's in there. But yeah, so the play time varies depending on your experience with the game, for sure.
Okay. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about with Fort. The game is available now, I believe. Yes.
Yes. It is available now.
Pre-order is
retail release this week, so it should be in your retail store this week, or also you can get it on at leadergames.com, and it should start shipping right now. Of course, COVID and shipping applies there. It might take a little bit longer than normal.
Yeah. Anything else to mention about Fort, or?
No, I think it is all good, unless there's questions in the chat.
Okay. No, it mostly just comes, I mean, you can imagine things in the future where you have, there's other neighborhoods around. You go in different avenues, and there's always new friends to make.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know people, whenever we did announce the game, people asking instantly if there was an expansion. With Leader, we never say never. There's definitely been talks about it, but nothing confirmed quite yet. So. Okay.
We have 5 minutes more or so. I don't know if you want to talk about other things in the works from Leader. Update on Oath. Do you give like a overview of, minute overview of Oath, and then how does that look?
So where Oath is at right now, we've been in a design lock for a couple of months now, for about 2 months. We are pretty much submitted every file to the printer right now. So we are roughly on track for fulfilling due to what we positioned on the Kickstarter. And so you can end up playing the game on TTS. Also go to our BGG page, because that's where Cole has put all of his wonderful development and designer diaries out there, so you can follow along with the story. But right now, Oath is done. All of the art is done. We're really excited. I had a chance to play it last week. Everything fully finished all the way through. So it's been awesome to see where it's come. And to see all the interaction that we've had on it with our community and on BGG, even at BGG Con, it was great to be able to be there at a convention and have people drop in and play with us. So that's where Oath is at right now. As far as where Cole's time is going to go, we've mentioned briefly, but Cole will be working on the next expansions for Root. I can't say what factions there will be or what contents are in there, but there is more Root coming for sure from that. And then aside from more Root, of course, there's Root Digital that went up. That's an early access, which is, by my personal opinion, one of the most finished early access games I've seen on Steam. So you can play that. And that is we partnered with Direwolf with that. And then Patrick has been working on several projects. You can follow Patrick on his Twitter to follow things like Void Lich and Castle Blood that's been going on, but no confirmed details about those titles right now as well.
And baby pics too. He also posts a lot of baby pics.
And cute pictures of his children, Sebastian and Alex, for sure.
Yes. Can you give a minute overview of Oath for people who are not familiar with it?
Yeah.
Candace did a huge write-up in January 2020. She did a long write-up there, but of course, that was 9 months ago. People have lost their minds since then.
So Oath is a game, how I like to describe it, it's a game that remembers. So Cole really wanted to approach what it looks like to have a story be going on from campaign to campaign. And so there's over 200 unique cards and card abilities that play into this game. And basically there is a chancellor and several citizens in this kingdom or this land, and you get to make out that story however you like, depending on how the cards you play. So there is going to be an oath that is declared at the beginning of the game. Let's say oath for citizenship. And so you are wanting to have dominance over the land. And you are going to try to complete those victory conditions for that oath by playing cards. Whether it's for dominance, you're going to try to control most of the board, right? And the really cool thing about oath is how that game ends will be how the other game is determined. So if the game ends in a certain way where you end up using a lot of cards from a certain faction, like let's say the Nomads, the next game will probably be, you'll be able to pull in other cards from the nomadic deck to add to the main deck you play in Oath to grow the campaign forward. Also, the person who won will now be the new chancellor, to possibly be overthrown or to be able to compete to hold their reign. So the really cool thing is being able to see all these really intricate and immersive stories merge from this gameplay. With Oath, gameplay can last around, I've played games as short as, like, I think we've had 45-minute games in the office, depending on what Oath is in play and what cards are being played out, up to about an hour and a half. And we've also thought about the process of Oath throughout the development and the product design, that we have an amazingly built custom insert that Patty, our graphic designer, ended up building out for us to be able to save your game state. So setup will be really easy. And then the other thing too is that we do have a very quick start guide. If people are familiar with Root, you have the Walking Through Root book. But with Oath, you will have, very similar to Fog of Love, a deck of cards that will be walking you through your first process about, you know, what does a vision look like? How can you win with a vision? What's the Oath look like? What do these cards do and play out? And what it looks like to end a game and be able to do the Chronicle phase that will then tie everything up in a bow to be able to play for the next campaign, everything like that. So that is Oath.
So you mentioned, for example, if there's, I believe, heavy Nomad presence, you'll be adding more Nomad cards for the next game. Does everything pile on from game to game, or are you sort of cycling new things in and old things out? That is,
you're cycling new things in and old things out. Yeah.
Okay. So it's not necessarily a narrative path that is going to slowly progress with a whole history behind it. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like things will be lost in time and other things will be introduced.
Yep, absolutely. So there's no pre-written narratives. It's how your game plays out is how your deck is going to form. And so like playing on the TTS and also through the forums, especially on BGG, people have talked about how they've had several nomadic wins or several wins with this kind of oath, with these certain factions and everything like that. So everybody's gaming experience and your campaign will be uniquely your own. And there's no pre-written narrative. It is the narrative the story that you are telling through your game.
Okay, that you can reboot if you want and just start from initial conditions again.
Absolutely. You can start fresh with just the normal, the base game or the deck that comes out of the box. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because it's legacy-ish, but not really.
Yeah, and you're not destroying anything. You can always reset. The story can go anyway. We're not trying to gear you a certain way. So yeah, using legacy is something that we definitely we don't use at all, and we like to use a campaign and then pretty much like the Chronicle method of, it's a Chronicle game where at the end of each game you're going to chronicle everything, write down what won, what factions were used, what oath was won, how was it won, was it vision used to win, and then that will determine how your next game is played out.
Okay, that definitely is better terminology, because one of the restrictions that often seems to come with legacy games is you want to play with the same people all the time. But this is much more, you have new starting conditions and everyone's on the same page with the starting conditions and go forward from there.
You go with it. So. Yeah, and the really cool thing is during Gen Con Online, Cole had done a rolling campaign with different people that we were demoing with. So you can drop in at any time and the story can change as people play it, and your deck is going to change each campaign. So Cole didn't want to restart it. He wanted to see where the campaign went with all different people playing it and just to see how accessible it was for people to drop in. So you don't have to buy this game to just only play with your gaming group. You can buy it because you love it and show all your friends, and be able to have them drop in and reset whenever you want.
That's right. Or just bring it back to other people and be like, oh, here's what's happened with the world now. And
exactly. Yeah. And that's the great and amazing thing. Eric, I wish I could paint it out. Is the story is so ripe with this one. The world building that Cole and Kyle both did. The art alone on the cards is really interesting. So I'm just really excited for people to get the game in their hands, because we can talk about it, and it's wait until you can experience it as well.
And that'll be when?
So it will be, the Kickstarter will be fulfilling towards the end of Q1, and then hopefully we'll be in stores by Q2.
All right. We still won't be together by then. I don't think.
I hope, Eric. We'll play.
We'll see. We'll get together. Final comment. Barbara Allen in chat says your hair looks gorgeous. So I thought I'd relay
thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gates, for joining us for the look at Fort and some other titles coming from Leader Games. Thank you.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys.